If you're a real Jets fan, you root for the Jets to win every single time they lace them up and take the field. Or wait, if you're a real Jets fan, you don't root for meaningless wins. You root for draft position so your GM has the best opportunity to pick the best player to make this team better over the long term. Which one is it? I'm Glenn Naughton with Jet Nation Radio and JetNation.com. Be sure to log in to JetNation.com where you can register to become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. So, Jets have a great win the other day. Yes, it's against the lowly Jacksonville Jaguars, but Zach Wilson looked very good. And they did, depleted roster. 1 million guys out with COVID. Zach Wilson goes into this game. He doesn't have his starting guards. He doesn't have his first receiver, his second receiver, his third receiver. He has his tight ends, but who really cares about that? Michael Carter's back, great. But this team was depleted. This was a replacement player team. Yes, you're playing the Jaguars, but that's still a tall order to beat any NFL team with that many guys out. Kudos to Zach Wilson. Love the fact that we're seeing him use his legs more. I said during the game that it was so frustrating this season for those of us who watched him extensively at BYU. I know a lot of fans, myself included, took the time to watch every single snap that guy took at BYU, and he could run when he needed to, when the opportunity was there, and we weren't seeing that with the Jets. Now we saw it quite a bit the other day. Runs for 91 yards, franchise record, 52-yard touchdown run for a quarterback. Really good day for Zach Wilson. The O-line looked much better than most people had anticipated, and we saw Jason Pinnock take some big steps at safety. Pinnock at safety is a new thing. So to see him, he looked a little uncomfortable the first couple games we saw him out there. This was as comfortable as he's looked. He had some big tackles. He broke up a pass. He dislodged a pass from Marvin Jones when he leveled him deep down the field. So a good day for him. All in all, a really good day for the team. You get the win. The kids are playing well. But of course, it has to follow up with the argument. Do you root for the meaningless wins or do you root for the draft position? I can speak to this because I've been in both camps. I had my days and my times where I was like, I'm a fan. Real fans root for wins. You never want your team to lose. What kind of fan are you? How could you possibly want your team to lose a football game? That makes you a bad fan. Well, you know what? Is there not some credibility to those who say, I'm a fan who's rooting for long-term success? And I don't think that beating the Jacksonville Jaguars this past week is going to alter the trajectory of the franchise. If you think that this win this Sunday is going to propel the Jets to greatness and they needed this win, I would disagree. But arguments can be made on both sides. I want the draft position, but you know what? When I'm sitting there watching the game, I'm screaming my head off while Zach Wilson's running down the sideline. I'm cheering like hell when they take the lead. And then I stop and realize, it's bad for draft position. But you know what? I'm a fan. I'm not going to sit there and actively root against these players. But if they happen to lose, I don't mind all that much. Because I do want one of the top pass rushers in this class. But as I said, you can make that argument that as a fan, how do you root for a team to lose? But to root for the team to lose so that they can be better for the long term, how does that make somebody a bad fan? So you want better players through the draft so we can maybe have some sustainable success for decades. What a terrible fan you are. And I get all this, I see people on Twitter, on message boards, on Jet Nation. There's no guarantees in the draft, and maybe you take Hutchinson, and he's a bust, and then what? Well, listen, this is life in the NFL. What are you going to do? Stop scouting guys? Stop drafting players because previous guys at those positions failed? I've seen several people just a few minutes ago on Twitter. Yeah, but Glenn, what about David Clowney? He was supposed to be good. Do you think that's how Joe Douglas's meetings go? Do you think the Jets and the brass and the scouts, they all sit down, and every time they throw a name at Joe Douglas, he reminds them of a player who played that position and failed, so we can't take that guy? Hey, Joe, let's take Michael Carter. Oh, no, come on, guys, Blair Thomas. What are we doing here? Come on, pull your heads out. Joe, what about this guy? What about the wide receiver? Let's take this receiver in round 2. Come on, guys, Stephen Hill. Come on, how soon do we forget? Stephen Hill was a bust. We can't take a wide receiver in the second round. That's not how it works. All you can do as a fan is place your faith in the GM. Doesn't matter if it's Joe Douglas or Mike McCagnon or John Idzik, some of the worst GMs in history. All you can do is want the best for them. And the best thing you can do for any GM is expand the number of players they have to choose from. And by losing some games down the stretch, some meaningless games down the stretch, you're doing that. You're expanding the number of, and you might only expand it by one, but that might be the one that's at the top of their board. Joe Douglas and his scouts might be meeting however often they meet, calls, email, Zoom, whatever, and they might all be sitting there going, man, Hutchinson is the guy. We think this guy can change our franchise, our culture, a tone setter, get after the quarterback. Maybe it's Thibodeau, whoever, but there might be a guy that they view as the perfect player to add to this roster, and maybe that one extra loss puts them in position to get that guy. And maybe they're wrong. That's fine. The GMs are going to be wrong. You don't not draft guys because previous guys haven't worked out. And are these meaningless wins? But Glenn, we have to build a culture. You start a culture of winning by letting Zach Wilson learn and win these games down the stretch and figure out how to win at the pro level. Right. The way Geno Smith learned to win when he won 3 out of 4 down the stretch. And then the following season, the team goes 4-12. Or maybe just a couple of years ago, when the Jets go 6-2 in the second half under Adam Gase. Oh, look, this team's a run. We're building a winning culture. They're learning to win right in front of our eyes. This is going to carry over to 2-14. You don't get to bring wins into the next season. Modern day NFL, you can build some momentum, win a few games down the stretch, and then what happens? 25 of those guys are gone next year. Whether it's free agency, trade, being cut, released, waived, whatever. Guys who salary cap casualties, whatever the reason may be. So 20, 30, 40% of the roster that just learned how to win it doesn't exist anymore. Every year is a reset. So I don't think that beating the Jacksonville Jaguars, while I did enjoy the win, and it was great to see Zach Wilson play well, I don't see this win as changing the trajectory of the franchise. And then let's say the Bucs are in the playoffs. Let's say they bench all their starters and the Jets win that game. And by the time they play the Bills bench all their starters and the Jets win that game. Not going to happen. But let's pretend. Great. You had a 3-game win streak against the Jaguars, some backups, and some more backups. You think that's going to carry over and make this team, that's going to be the building block that propels them? No. These things don't carry over. It's not like I'm having to point back 50 years to give you an example. It literally just happened with Adam Gase and his 6-2 finish. And we finally turned things around. And a few years before that with Rex Ryan and winning 3 out of 4 down the stretch with Geno Smith. Strong finish on offense and thinking, oh, wow, okay, this team finally gets it. They win 4 games the following season. So there is no, you're a bad fan if you root for this and I'm a bad fan if I root for that. Listen, as the old saying goes, more than one way to skin a cat. Maybe the Jets sneak out a win out of the next couple games. They completely, Hutchinson, Thibodeau, maybe they're gone, completely out of the picture. Maybe you take a guy like Karlaftis, and maybe he's as good or better than those guys. We don't know. All of this is a projection. And I've yet to see a single expert, analyst, current player, well, those guys don't tend to comment, but former players, former GMs, paid analysts, I've yet to see a single guy say that Karlaftis is anywhere near as good as the other 2 guys. But who the hell knows? It happens all the time where guys outperform the expectations of their draft slot. But these aren't things you can bank on. These are just projections. And if you have 2 guys at a spot, even if it's tackle, if you want to take a tackle because you're worried about Mekhi Becton's durability and the fact that you've only got George Fant under contract for 1 more year and the fact that Morgan Moses is a little bit old, fine, take a tackle. But whatever you're going to take, whatever position you want your GM to have as many options as possible. Trading up should be one of those options. I pitched that on Twitter, quite a few people on board with it, and a few people, we need players. We can't afford to trade picks right now. Listen, if you're looking to move from 4-3 or 4-2, you're not giving up multiple 2s and 3s to get there. No team is going to realistically expect that. It's going to cost you probably one extra pick, and then you have that next pick that maybe you move down a few slots and you recoup that pick. But even if you don't, even if you stay put, say you trade up, you lose a pick, worst case, say you lose 2. You give up 2 extra picks to move up to get that elite edge rusher, the guy you believe is going to be an elite edge rusher. And that's why you draft him. You don't not draft him because Vernon Golston wasn't an elite edge rusher. So you get those guys. Between free agency, the number of picks Joe Douglas has, there is no way that giving up an extra pick, maybe 2, but I would venture to guess you could get it done with 1. 1 extra draft pick is not what's going to stop the Jets from going to the Super Bowl. Okay? You're not going to convince me that, they would have turned this thing around if they would have had that extra 1 draft pick. And they should have gone with Karlaftis, who I like. And I think he might end up being the guy if the Jets stand pat. And I don't mind that. But I also have no problem if the Jets say, you know what? Karlaftis is a nice player. We need an edge guy. We're gonna give up one of those second rounders. We're going to give up that Carolina second rounder to move up 2 spots in order to grab whichever edge rusher, we prefer, or the one of the 2 that's still on the board. So, but to say that you're not a real fan because you're rooting for wins is garbage. I mean, I can't relate to that rationale anymore because, again, I used to be that guy, but now I'm just like, listen, you got to look at the long-term health of the club, and the best way to do that is through the draft, and saying that you shouldn't do it because, well, the last GM sucked. So this GM, we always make the wrong pick. Should teams just go through every draft with that mentality? Well, guys, the draft is coming up, but the 5 GMs before us sucked, so we're kind of screwed. No. You go in with your scouts, with your scouting reports, and you go over and rack and stack your players. We like this guy everyone else likes, we don't. This guy, our security team told us had some issues in college, so we're taking him off our board completely. That's the other thing. A lot of us, and I'm guilty of it too, have to remind myself sometimes, we pretend that, what we have in our head is anything close to what the team has on their draft board. There might be 2 or 3 players that you love. Fit the scheme, productive in college, this, that, the other. We don't know what the medicals say. We don't know what the background checks say. What the security people found when they look into the player's past. That guy might have been taken off the board before the season even started. And here we are pulling our hair out. Why aren't they drafting that guy? That we don't know. Right? But what we do know is that there are players every year. Just look at the draft. Daniel Jeremiah, right? Highly respected, former scout, great podcast, all that stuff. I heard him discuss this a few months ago, and it was a really good point. Talked about how teams have their boards racked and stacked. And he said, the majority, and you see that even just on, look at any pick 5, 6, 7 draft websites, and you'll kind of see the same thing. The first 10 to 12 players tend to be almost exactly the same. Maybe 1 or 2 guys flip, but it's the same 10 or so names. Between picks 13, 14, all the way through 40, it's anyone's best guess. Because each class, you're going to have about a dozen guys who are head and shoulders above the rest of the class. And those are the guys that get prioritized. And everyone else after that, what might be 17th on your board might be 39th on someone else's board. And again, without us knowing where the Jets have these players ranked, it's silly to sit there and say, why didn't they take this guy or that guy? But the draft's coming. It should be a very exciting draft season. A very exciting offseason talking about the draft. The Jets do have plenty of needs, but they've got some cap space. And they're not, especially on this team on offense, when healthy, they're only a couple of players away from being a really good offense. Add 1, maybe 2 O-linemen, a tight end, and a 4th receiver, and you're good. You really are. You're good to go. But speaking of receivers, and speaking of offensive linemen, Denzel Mims, my goodness. I can't recall a guy just plummeting the way he has in terms of production, value. Here's a guy who last year, you look at, he's probably the guy who I saw most associated with the term steal of the draft in terms of Jets fans. This was a guy a lot of fans were screaming for before the Jets traded down. And then when the Jets did trade down, there was a lot of, oh, I can't believe we had a shot at Denzel Mims and we passed on him. And then when you got him, he was still there. It was, oh, look how lucky we are. And then he starts the season injured. He finally gets on the field, and he's making plays. I mean, what Denzel Mims did as a rookie, these weren't earth-shattering numbers, but it was pretty damn impressive when you look at the whole picture. When you look at the fact it's year one, no camp, no training camp, no preseason, no games. Couldn't get on the field because of hamstring injuries. So without having never taken part in an NFL practice, Denzel Mims gets on the field, and he produces at a decent level when you consider the fact it was the worst offense this team has ever seen, at least that I've ever seen for this team. So Denzel Mims, there was plenty of reason for hope. Then this season happens. I mean, listen, Robert Saleh came out the other day, said all the right things. No one's given up on Denzel Mims. His story isn't even close to being written or finished. It doesn't surprise me that a head coach would support a player. But Saleh sounded adamant. You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of the preseason or the offseason when the media, the fans, they were pushing, sign a corner. And Robert Saleh came out with this like really emphatic, listen, when I was in Seattle, we played these kids, you roll with them, you see what they can do. Even then, some of us were like, well, he's saying all the right things, but they're going to add a veteran corner. And they didn't. Robert Saleh said it like he meant it, and he meant it. So does he mean it about Denzel Mims now? That they're not giving up on him, and that he's going to be back, and they expect... I find that hard to believe. Mims has been that bad. I've been one of many supporters who all year I've been saying, play the guy. He's in a fog right now. He can't... The penalties, the drops, ran out of bounds on his route the other day, so even if he makes that catch, it's not a catch, it's a flag. And I don't even know if that was, honestly, the sun, whatever it was, the sun, the camera, the replays, I honestly couldn't tell that ball in the back of the end zone if it was catchable for him or if a DB got it, knocked it away. But either way, it wouldn't have mattered because Mims stepped out of bounds. I mean, every time he gets on the field, he's doing another thing where you're like, what is going on here? This guy should be feasting right now with all the receiver injuries. He can't get a catch. So Denzel Mims, you can say all you want, Robert Saleh, that he'll be back. And listen, I'm a fan. I like the guy. I would love nothing more than for Denzel Mims to come back next year, for the light to come on, for the fog to lift, and for him to start producing. But that he is a long way from that right now, and that's a shame. Second round pick, tons of potential. Everyone loved it when the pick was made, but we know how fans can be. Guy has a couple of the second a guy has a bad day, that's it. I've seen this fan base attack guys game one, mistake one. As if he's been, botching, as if he's been making mistakes for a decade. So fans turn in a hurry. He's a steal, he's great, such value. Look at the speed, the height, the high point, catch the ball, catch the contested passes, blah, blah, blah. Couple drops, oh, this guy's a bum, get rid of him. So fans turn quick, but in this case, the fans are looking like they were right. Well, for those who turned on Mims in a heartbeat. And then the other guy who fans seem to be turning on, not seem to, a good number of fans are, Mekhi Becton. And listen, it's frustrating. Okay, I've been back and forth with Becton. I said after last season, I tweeted out that I was surprised how little conversation we saw regarding his injuries. Even though they were kind of fluky, Gase was an idiot for putting him back on the field before he was healed. I get that. And then this season he gets rolled up on, which I say, my take was it's kind of a red flag. It's not, I'm not ready to slap him with the injury prone label because someone rolled up on his leg. But the fact that he missed a bunch of time the previous year, gets hurt week 1 this year, a little bit alarming, worth watching. An 8-week injury turns into a 16-week injury. If you weren't alarmed before, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Now, what I did like is that when Robert Saleh was asked about Mekhi Becton and his future at left tackle, Saleh wouldn't commit. He said, I'm not going to get into that right now. And as I've discussed on here before, Becton played right tackle in college. They flipped him back and forth his second year at Louisville. He played left, he played right. So he's played both. Now you have George Fant playing at a high level. You have some really good tackles in this draft coming out who might be in play with one of those first-round picks. Maybe you do move Becton to right tackle. But to say it's not concerning to see him get knocked out in week 1 in a way that, again, was not an injury-prone thing. It was a fluke injury, but you're now looking at a guy who I believe the initial report was 4 to 5 weeks. Then they said 4 to 8 weeks. Then 8 weeks has now turned into the season. And, yeah, he's a big guy. That's why it's taking him time to heal. And I don't want to get into the in shape, out of shape thing again, but I guess I just did. He's never been out of shape. Show me the Twitter video, the Twitter picture, the game footage where Mekhi Becton's a big fat slob. Number 1, he's 100 feet tall. Number 2, he's an NFL offensive tackle. That means you should be big. So yes, he's big, but I've shared a clip just a few weeks ago from Mekhi Becton in the gym working out. I think it was 2 weeks before camp kicked off. Loose t-shirt. He was svelte, flexing, having some fun with his friends, whatever. He was far from out of shape. And this was a couple weeks before the season started, or before training camp started. I think it may have been less than 2 weeks. He was in shape for the season. He was ready to go. We've discussed the foot injury, the plantar fasciitis. That's an injury that occurs from excessive overuse, which could mean the guy was busting his ass and working out a ton to the point where it injured his foot. As I said on this show several times in discussing Becton, it is a common injury in marathon runners. It is a common injury in triathletes because it's often an overuse injury. It's not that's a fat lazy guy, so he got that injury that you get from working too hard. So none of that adds up. It's one of these groupthink situations where one or two people say something, everyone else just latches on, and for the past 6-7 months, everyone's been saying that Mekhi Becton's fat and out of shape, despite no evidence of it. No evidence of him being out of shape. No evidence of him being too big. The only photo and video, look at the couple pictures they got of him in camp standing next to Elijah Vera Tucker. In no way did he look like someone who shouldn't have looked the way he looked. Could he have dropped 8 to 10 pounds? Yeah, sure, fine. Any offensive lineman can probably drop a few pounds. But to keep implying that, this injury is because he's too big, he's too fat, he's too lazy. It's lazy. So, Becton, you hope he's back next year. And now listen, if he comes into camp next year off the knee injury and he's put on 20, 30 pounds, yeah, then let's talk about his weight. Let's talk about that being an issue. Even earlier in the year when Robert Saleh addressed his conditioning, I almost wish that question would be posed to Robert Saleh again. Because because what Saleh said wasn't necessarily weight. It may have been. But the comment was something along the lines of, guys have to take better care of themselves. He could have been talking flexibility. He could have been talking, yeah, he's at a weight he can play at now, but we would like him even smaller. Meaning you can do better doesn't mean you're just a lazy slob who's not putting in any work. And it would be nice if guys on the beat would say directly to Robert Saleh, when you were discussing Mekhi Becton taking care of himself, were you talking about his weight? Were you talking about him maybe staying out too late? Were you talking, what was it? Because Saleh never said it was his weight, but because he's a big person, everyone just assumed that and jumped on board. Again, despite the fact, whether it's his Instagram, Twitter, I don't know, whatever it is, Becton's posted videos really since pre-draft last year, all the way through, of him working out. I've never once looked at a video of him and thought, wow, that guy really needs to lose some weight. I've looked at videos and said that's a huge human being because he's just a naturally huge human being, and I'm glad to see how much work he's putting in. So we'll see what happens with him moving forward. The other thing I wanted to touch on real quick in terms of guys moving forward and things I wish the beat would ask the team, Cam Clark. We've heard him discussed almost never. I've heard Robert Saleh asked about him, I think, one time this season. And it was, how is he progressing? He's coming along. But this is a guy, and, part of it, I was a big Cam Clark guy coming out of college. A lot of people thought he projected as a starting player. I was one of those people. Is he a part of the plan now? Or has Cam Clark because of the seriousness of his injury, a spinal injury that limits the way you're able to move, could make you reevaluate whether or not you want to play the game. And the team is not, since the injury, we've not heard the team say, we expect Cam Clark back next year. They've not said that. They've made one or two very brief comments, and those comments have been, we expect him to make a full recovery. That doesn't mean he plans on playing again. And I would assume, since the team hasn't said anything, that they expect him to, but maybe he wanted some time to think. My hope, look, Cam Clark, do what's right for you. My hope, because I'm a fan and I want the team to do well, and I was a fan of the guy, hope he fully recovered, and I hope he says, all right, let's put the pads back on and get back on the field. That would be fantastic. I think he's a guy who might be able to play a little bit of right tackle. I think he's a guy who might be able to play right guard. So what happens with him moving forward? No idea. Sure would be nice if one of the beat writers would say, directly to Robert Saleh, Cam Clark was knocked out during camp with a spinal injury. You've told us a couple times you're expecting him to make a full recovery. Has the team spoken to him about whether or not he plans on returning to football? And that question has not been asked. Would be nice if it was. So we'll see what happens there. But listen, all in all, good week for the team in terms of performance. It was nice to see the young guys play well. No video or Jet Nation Radio AM last week because I had an insane cough. I couldn't stop coughing for more than 2 minutes. So a show was not going to happen. Did multiple COVID tests, all negative. So just a bad cough. But couldn't do a show because of it. Glad I was able to get this one knocked out. And but wasn't able to touch on last week's game against the Dolphins. It was a shame. Again, we saw Zach Wilson, much like the Philadelphia game, played a really high level early on, did some really good things, and then the team just fell apart in the second half. Defense couldn't get the ball back, so the Jets had very few opportunities on offense. When they did have opportunities on offense, Zach Wilson was getting killed. Wasn't on the O-line. Go back and watch the film. O-line was getting killed on Twitter. Yes, Connor McDermott, yes, he was an issue. Outside of that, it was Michael Carter, it was the tight ends, it was the scheme. These are the things that got Zach Wilson sacked 6 times against the Dolphins. It had nothing to do with any of the starting offensive linemen. It was the fact that they had a 4th-string tackle. How many teams are going to play well with a 4th-string tackle? Not many. But you had a 4th-string tackle, you had the back getting beat, you had the tight ends getting beat, you had Wilson rolling out on a naked bootleg where an unblocked defender came in and got the sack. So these were not plays where Zach Wilson was making mistakes or the offensive line was getting blown up, again, outside of the 4th tackle. So really that Miami game, wish I had an opportunity to go into it more, but that's in the past. Glad Wilson played as well as he did. Would have been nice if things held up so he could have continued on that in the second half. This week, of course, against the Jags, the passing numbers weren't gaudy, but they were never going to be. Again, your top 3 receivers are out, your 2 starting guards are out. That was going to be an issue no matter what. But in the end, you get the win. Zach Wilson was accurate. Zach Wilson, well, for the most part, he was accurate. He had 3 balls that were at least three drops. It may have been more. You had the route that looked like the wrong route by Denzel Mims. Somebody was wrong, Wilson or Mims. At this point, Mims doesn't really get the benefit of the doubt. But again, some young kids played well. They continue to play well. Michael Carter's going to be a great one. And this week, looks like they could have a full rookie class. A lot of guys coming back who have yet to really play a full game together. So a little bit of reason to watch this week against the Bucs. However, of course, you expect it to be a loss, which, if you're happy about it, doesn't make you a bad fan. Okay? You can root for the long-term success, or you can root for the short term. That's up to you. But it all comes down to every fan wants the team to be good. If you believe that winning some games down the stretch makes you good, whether you're right or wrong doesn't matter, that's what you believe. If you believe having a wider pool of players to pick from come draft time is ideal, that doesn't make you a bad fan either. Okay, rooting for wins, rooting for draft position, it's just your opinion on how you think the team will be better for the future, and that's what we all want. That'll do it for this week. As I said, check out Jet Nation Radio tonight. Go to jetnation.com, log in, check out the most active Jets message board on the web. That'll do it for us this week. And let's see some quality play this week against the Bucs, win or lose. Have a good one, Jets fans.